We have chosen our character's race, class, and have equipped them for the dangerous but exciting life that awaits them. But your character is more than just a board game pawn. They are an individual, a person who has lived a life, who has had experiences, has a personality, and who might have family and friends, or enemies. In this episode, we're going to talk about the events that have shaped your character into an authentic person. When it comes to fleshing out your character, you can go as deep as you want into your own backstory. The minimum amount I would recommend are some basic details like your character's name and a physical description. I also recommend giving your character a unique visual trait, like strangely colored eyes, extravagant clothing, multiple piercings, or whatever else you can think of. Such a unique feature can bring some inspiration for your character's backstory, like if they got piercings, for example. Did they have a significance? Did your character get them during their adolescence, during a rebellious phase? Or are they a mark that associates you with a group of thieves? Your character is your creation, and these choices are completely up to you. As for the half-elf cleric we've been creating, I'm going to give them some of these basic details as well. Their name is Mickey Tumblerun. He is a male half-elf. We've already established his height is 5 foot 10 inches. He's rather skinny and fair-skinned. And for his unique visual trait, he has a natural streak of violet in his hair due to a birthmark on his scalp in the shape of a moon. Now let's continue fleshing out our character's past by selecting a background. The backgrounds in the player's handbook are character archetypes meant to help players figure out what their characters' lives were like before they became adventurers. These backgrounds can be found on page 125 of the player's handbook, or page 38 of the basic rules. And once again, not every background is available in the basic rules. Maybe you decide your character was a criminal, stealing values on behalf of a thieves' guild. Or maybe your character was an entertainer, dazzling townsfolk with their fiddle-playing skills while they toured with a minstrel group. The quick build paragraph in our class entry suggests a background that works nicely with your class. But if that background doesn't interest you or make sense for the idea you're developing, you don't have to take it. In the case of Mickey Tumblerun, his cleric class recommends the acolyte background. The ideas that I'm brewing for his story don't have him spending a lot of time in places of worship, so I will find him a different background. Hopefully, after reading some of the different backgrounds, you can get an idea as to what your character did before becoming an adventurer, and what changed to make them a member of their class. In addition to helping your character feel like a real person, backgrounds also offer some in-game benefits. Each background grants players 2 additional skill proficiencies, some equipment, and possibly tool proficiencies, additional languages, or both. Backgrounds also give players a special roleplay feature. These benefits don't provide a mechanical bonus, but rather give a player something to roleplay with, in the form of an ally or organization, a nugget of knowledge, or an established reputation. With the criminal background, you might know some contacts within the local thieves guild. Or with the entertainer background, you might have developed some fame in town, and villagers may sometimes give you gifts. The backgrounds offered may not fully capture the backstory you have in mind, but that's okay. You can work with your DM to customize your background by mixing and matching the benefits and proficiencies from other backgrounds, as it makes sense for your backstory. Or you might collaborate with your DM to make a whole new background just for your character. I'm going to make up Mickey Tumblerun's backstory and enter it into the bottom left section on the second page of our character sheet. Mickey is a young guy from a small town who worked in his parents' restaurant as a talented chef and sometimes a waiter until he became an adventurer. His life turned upside down when a hero came to town, looking to find people of promise to be taken to the capital city for specialized training. The background that I think closely matches Mickey's backstory concept is the guild artisan background, which is a mercantile and tradesman kind of background. This background can only be seen in the player's handbook. Now that I've chosen a background, I'll start filling in the proficiencies that this background gives me on my character sheet. With this background, our character receives skill proficiencies in insight and persuasion. Now already something is afoot. Persuasion is one of the skills I've chosen from my class's skill proficiencies, but I can't take it twice. The rules at the beginning of the background section, however, say that if you gain the same proficiency from two different sources, in our case, from our class and our background, you can choose another proficiency of the same kind. So, since we have a duplicate skill proficiency, we can choose another skill from the entire list to gain proficiency in. Since I've decided that Mickey is a chef, it might be good for him to have knowledge of vegetables. The nature skill should help cover this. While Mickey didn't get a tool proficiency from becoming a cleric, he did get a tool proficiency from his background. Tool proficiencies are as they sound. You are proficient with a set of implements that allow you to craft, repair, or perform specialized tasks that require those implements. And I'll be going into more detail on tools in the next episode. A list of tools can be found on page 154 of the Player's Handbook and pages 52 to 53 of the Basic Rules. The Guild Artisan background gives us proficiency with one kind of artisan's tools. Looking at the list of options, the cook's utensils seem the most appropriate for the character we're creating. I can enter that in the bottom left with other proficiencies and languages. However, just because you're proficient with something doesn't mean you actually own it. We'll have to find a way to actually acquire some cook's utensils either during character creation or while playing the game. We also get another language, and it says one of your choice. You can just pick another language, but you could also ask your dungeon master for some advice on what language to take. The DM might tell you of other races that you have commonly interacted with, and so have picked up a language from interacting with another group of people. We'll say that Mickey has done a lot of business with dwarves, and so has picked up the dwarven language, and we can write that in the lower left as well. We also get more equipment, and a lot of it is flavored to work with your background. This is another chance for you to get creative, making decisions about how you acquired some of this equipment, if they're important to you, or maybe given to you by someone special. There aren't guidelines for this, it's just up to your own creativity. The Guild Artisan background gives us a set of artisan's tools. So now we can get our own cook's utensils. We also get a letter of introduction from our guild. I've decided that Mickey's dad wrote a letter of recommendation for him, in the event that he needs to find chef work wherever he ends up. We're also getting a set of traveler's clothes and a belt pouch containing 15 gold pieces. In the equipment box, you might have noticed the smaller spaces with CP, SP, etc. written in them. These spaces are to help you organize your coinage. Since we got some gold pieces, we'll put our 15 gold pieces into the space labeled GP, fourth from the bottom. The roleplay feature Mickey gains is called Guild Membership. The basic summary is that Mickey's fellow guild members will feed him and give him a place to stay. He can also receive legal help and potentially be put in touch with powerful people. However, Mickey will need to pay 5 gold pieces a month for his membership dues. Mickey's background feels quite fleshed out at this point, and we can go further by developing the people he knows, like his parents and their restaurant, and maybe some significant events from his past. These kinds of things should be developed in collaboration with your dungeon master, because if you ever encounter these people in the game, your DM will be the one role-playing as them. They'll want to understand who you intend for these characters to be. While you were looking through the different background options, you may have noticed that there are some tables that accompany them. These tables are there to help you flesh out your character's personality, and they provide qualities that match whichever background you have selected. As with most things during character creation, these are only suggestions if you want to use them. Each background has 4 different tables that will begin sparking your creativity and help you make your character even more fully developed. The first table will cover personality traits. These are quirks that your character has that make them different, interesting, and fun. A personality trait could be something your character likes, dislikes, says often, other mannerisms, habits, routines. There are so many possible things that you can call a personality trait. If that seems overwhelming, feel free to choose something from the personality trait table matching your background. It's a good starting point. Or you could roll for it and see what you get. The first column in each of these tables shows a type of die, usually a D6 or D8. If you're not certain about which personality trait you should take, roll that die and see what number comes up. Based on the roll, you now have the personality trait next to that number in the table. Using this method is good practice for roleplay. It's a creative limitation. Forcing yourself to try and adapt a personality trait that might not have been your first pick can make your character very interesting. Though if you roll a result that you think is awful, just ignore it and roll it again. This should be fun for you as well. You might also discover your character has more personality traits after you start playing. Don't be surprised if that happens. It means you're becoming more invested in your character and learning more about them as a person. Even though your character is your creation, in a poetic way, they are also a stranger to you. As you make choices on your character's behalf, you might discover that your character, for example, doesn't like food prepared by magic. It's in these moments of discovery that you should note you've uncovered a new personality trait, just so you can be sure to be consistent in your roleplay. The section for these personality traits can be found in the top right section of your character sheet. Moving on to ideals, you may notice the words law, chaos, good, evil, or neutral next to the entries in each of the ideals tables. These words are attributed to something called character alignment. I've mentioned before that I won't be covering alignment in this series, but if you are interested, you can read about it on pages 122 of the Player's Handbook or pages 35 to 36 of the Basic Rules. Going back to ideals, they are a personal code that your character strongly believes in, the root of one's moral compass. Just as the Player's Handbook has presented them, it helps to boil an ideal down to a single word, and then elaborate on your ideal. Some ways to figure out what your character's ideal is to ask yourself some questions. What does my character strive for? What would cause them to make sacrifices? What would prompt them to take action? What type of behavior would disgust my character? They might have an ideal opposite of that behavior. Choose at least one ideal to start for your character, and you can use the tables in the same way we did for the personality traits. Now we move on to bonds. Bonds are kind of similar to ideals, but are more concrete, like physically or materially. They are an attachment your character has to something from their backstory. This can be a person, a place, an object, or even an event. This bond your character has may drive many of their actions, and could even make them behave recklessly should their bond become threatened. Your bond may come from any aspect of your backstory, and it very well could be that you end up creating or finding new bonds along the way. The last table is for flaws. Not everyone is perfect, and having a flaw is the cherry on top of a well-crafted character. A flaw represents a negative aspect that your character possesses. It could be something your character is scared of. Does your character have a vice of some sort? A weakness? Some sort of compulsive behavior that might get them into trouble? What makes them angry? Flaws are great because they can create drama within the game, presenting opportunities to roleplay or even whole adventures. Though now is a good time to mention, don't get carried away with constantly presenting your character's negative aspects. It's great to show brief glimpses as it makes a character interesting and realistic, but it can put strain on a game if it constantly comes up. And the goal is for everyone to have fun. For example, a barbarian character's flaw is that they have a hard time sitting still and they just want to fight. If that barbarian character gets into a fight with someone when the rest of the players are trying to talk to that person, that could be a problem at the table. If it does seem that some negativity is persisting with your group of players, it's best to sit everyone down and talk about it before or after a game session, trying to find a solution. Having covered all of that, let's begin to look at our character of Mickey Tumblerun. So we now know that Mickey is a talented chef who worked for his family, because of his guild artisan background, but what is Mickey like as a person? We'll begin entering this information in the top right of the first page of our character sheets. For our personality traits, we'll say Mickey grew up hearing many stories about heroes and their deeds, so he's fond of a good story. He also loves playing pranks and pretending to be other people, so we can get an idea that he's somewhat immature. For Mickey's ideals, we can boil it down to fame. Mickey hopes to have stories written about his heroic deeds someday, just like the stories he's heard in his youth. For his bonds, we could say that Mickey loves both of his parents and the restaurant they ran. We could also say he is protective of anyone he views as a personal hero. Looking at flaws for Mickey, let's say that Mickey has a penchant for lying and exaggerating. I think we can also say he sees good and evil in terms of black and white, so he's very naive when it comes to morality. But this is very much in line with his want to be a hero. With all these elements established, that nearly brings us to the end of our character building arc. There are some loose ends to tie up, especially for anyone who is building a spellcaster, but otherwise, your character is almost ready for adventure. And when they get there, they'll continue to grow and develop as you play D&D more and more. Moving forward, we'll be focusing more on the rules of how to play D&D. But our skill bonuses still need to be filled in as well, so the character sheet isn't entirely done just yet. So let's fill 2 needs with 1 deed. In the next video, we're going to go over skills and ability checks, what they are, how you use them, and we'll finally fill in those empty spaces next to our skills. Until then, be kind and play dicely.